Nathan Stanton stood at the edge of the cemetery, watching the last handful of dirt fall onto Marie's coffin. The November wind cut through his black suit, but he barely felt it. Grief had a way of numbing everything else. His son Lucas, 13 years old and hollow-eyed, gripped his hand with a strength that seemed desperate, as if letting go might send him floating away into the gray Connecticut sky. The turnout had been modest. Marie had been well-liked in Millbrook, their small town of barely 8,000 souls. But it was a Tuesday afternoon, and people had jobs, lives that continued despite death's interruptions. Nathan noticed the Arnolds hadn't shown up. Stephen Arnold and his wife Rebecca Hartman Arnold owned half the commercial real estate in town, and Marie had done legal transcription work for Stephen's firm. He'd expected at least a courtesy appearance. "Dad," Lucas's voice cracked. "Can we go now?" Nathan looked down at his son, seeing Marie in the shape of his eyes, the stubborn set of his jaw. "Yeah, buddy. Let's go home." The house felt cavernous without her. Marie had been the one who filled spaces with warmth, cooking smells, laughter, the constant background noise of true crime podcasts she'd been obsessed with. Now there was only silence and the faint chemical smell of the flowers people had sent, already wilting in their vases. Nathan had taken a week off from his job as a civil engineer. His boss had been understanding, even generous. But now, 3 days after the funeral, he was running out of ways to distract himself from the brutality of Marie's absence. She'd been fine one day, tired, sure, complaining of headaches and nausea, but nothing alarming. Then she'd collapsed at her desk. By the time the ambulance got her to Hartford Hospital, she was gone. Acute organ failure, the doctors said. Sometimes the body just gave up, they explained with practiced sympathy. She was only 37. Lucas had taken it hard. He'd barely spoken since the funeral, spending hours in his room with his headphones on. Nathan knew he should probably get the boy into therapy, but right now, he was just trying to keep both their heads above water. "I'm going back to school tomorrow," Lucas announced over their dinner of reheated casserole, one of 17 that had appeared on their doorstep, courtesy of sympathetic neighbors. Nathan looked up. "You sure? You can take more time if you need it." "I need normal." Lucas pushed food around his plate. "Sitting here just makes me think about her." "Okay," Nathan said softly. "But if you need to come home, you call me. Anytime." Lucas nodded, but didn't meet his eyes. That night, Nathan couldn't sleep. He found himself in Marie's home office, a converted spare bedroom where she'd done her transcription work. Her computer sat dark and silent. Her notebooks were stacked neatly on the desk. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, except she would never come back to it. He opened her laptop, not sure what he was looking for. Closure, maybe. Some sense of her. The screen came to life, showing her last browser tabs still open. Legal documents, transcription software, her email. Nathan was about to close it when something caught his eye, an email draft, unsent, dated the day before she died. The recipient was the Connecticut State Police. His heart began to pound as he read. "I have discovered evidence of systematic fraud involving estate manipulation and forgery. Multiple wills have been altered, properties transferred illegally, and vulnerable families robbed of their inheritances. I have documentation proving." The draft ended there. Unfinished. Unsent. Nathan's hands shook as he searched through her files. There, buried in a folder labeled Work Archive 2023, he found them. Scanned documents, photographs of legal papers, a handwritten ledger in Marie's neat script connecting names and dates and dollar amounts. The Arnolds' names appeared again and again. So did Carrie Alvarez, a probate attorney. Robbie Black, a local funeral director. Dean Herring, the middle school principal who also served as a notary public. Marie had discovered something. And then she died. The thought was too terrible to hold. Nathan slammed the laptop shut, his breath coming fast. No, that was crazy. People didn't get murdered in places like Millbrook. This was probably nothing. Marie had been working on some case, found some irregularities, and then died of sudden, unexplained organ failure. Nathan didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Nathan drove Lucas to Millbrook Regional Middle School, watching his son disappear into the building with his backpack slung over one shoulder. Lucas had barely touched his breakfast. Nathan wanted to call him back, keep him home, keep him safe from a danger he couldn't even name. But that was paranoia talking. Grief and sleeplessness were making him see conspiracies where none existed. He went to work, tried to focus on structural calculations and load-bearing specifications, but his mind kept drifting back to Marie's unfinished email. By noon, he'd convinced himself he was being ridiculous. By 2 o'clock, he'd nearly forgotten about it. Then his phone rang. The school's number. Mr. Stanton? The voice was tense, almost whispered. This is Dean Herring. I need you to come to my office immediately. Is Lucas okay? Did something? He's fine. Physically. But Mr. Stanton, this is extremely serious. Please come right away. Use the back entrance by the gym, not the main office. And please, don't call anyone or tell anyone where you're going. The line went dead. Nathan's stomach dropped. He grabbed his jacket and was in his truck before he could think. The 15-minute drive took 8. He parked in the far lot and found the gym entrance, his mind racing through possibilities. Had Lucas gotten in a fight? Threatened someone? Had the grief made him do something dangerous? Principal Herring was waiting by the door, his normally ruddy face pale and sweating despite the cold. He was a big man, former college football player gone to seed, but right now he looked small and frightened. This way, he muttered, not meeting Nathan's eyes. They walked through empty hallways. Classes were still in session, to Herring's office. The principal locked the door behind them and pulled all the blinds closed. His hands were shaking. What the hell is going on? Nathan demanded. Where's Lucas? He's in the nurse's office. He doesn't know anything about this yet. Herring sat heavily behind his desk. Mr. Stanton, I'm required to call the police about what we found. But I wanted to give you a chance to see it first. Because I've known your family for years, and this just doesn't make sense. What doesn't make sense? Herring opened his desk drawer with trembling fingers and pulled out a gallon-sized plastic bag. Inside was a tangle of jewelry, necklaces, rings, bracelets. Nathan recognized them instantly. They were Marie's. The pieces she'd been buried in, the heirlooms from her grandmother that she'd wanted to take with her. We found these in Lucas's backpack, Herring said quietly. Along with these, he laid out photographs. They showed a cemetery at night, a partially excavated grave, disturbed earth. The images were grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough. Nathan's world tilted. That's not, Lucas didn't. There's more. Herring's voice was barely a whisper now. He produced a final photograph, this one showing Lucas, or someone wearing Lucas's distinctive red jacket, standing near the cemetery gates with a shovel. The custodian found the backpack in Lucas's locker during a random check. He brought it straight to me. Mr. Stanton, I don't want to believe Lucas would desecrate his own mother's grave, but the evidence. It's bullshit. Nathan snatched up the photos, studying them with an engineer's eye for detail. The angle was wrong. The lighting was staged. And that jacket. Lucas had worn it to school today, which meant this photo was at least a day old, but the grave in the background looked freshly disturbed. This is a setup. Someone planted this. Herring looked miserable. I want to believe you, but I have to call the police. If I don't, I'm an accessory too. Give me 24 hours. I can't. Nathan leaned across the desk, his voice low and hard. Dean, you're a smart man. You know Lucas. You know he wouldn't do this. Which means someone put this in his locker. Someone is trying to destroy my son the day after we buried his mother. Now maybe that's just random cruelty, or maybe, he stopped, a terrible certainty crystallizing in his mind. Maybe someone wants us gone from this town. Understanding flickered in Herring's eyes. You think this has something to do with Marie's work? So Herring knew. Of course he did. His name was in Marie's ledger. Nathan straightened slowly. I think, he said carefully, that you need to decide which side you're on. Because if you make that call right now, Lucas's life is over. He'll be institutionalized, investigated, destroyed. And whoever planted this evidence gets exactly what they want. Herring stared at the jewelry, at the photos, at his own shaking hands. 24 hours, he finally whispered. But if you don't figure this out, I have to report it. I have a career, a family. You have a conscience, Nathan said. I hope. He walked out, not bothering with the back entrance anymore. His mind was already racing ahead, calculating angles and probabilities and risks. Lucas was waiting in the nurse's office, confused and anxious. Nathan signed him out without explanation, ignoring the nurse's questions. Dad, what's happening? Lucas asked as they reached the truck. Nathan looked at his son, really looked at him, seeing the fear and confusion and fragile trust in those eyes so much like Marie's. Get in, he said quietly. We're leaving. Leaving school? But leaving Millbrook. Tonight. Forever. He pulled out of the parking lot, checking his mirrors for followers, his mind already working through what needed to happen next. Marie had discovered the truth and died for it. Now they tried to frame Lucas, probably hoping to discredit anything Marie might have shared, to terrify Nathan into running. Well, he was going to run, but not the way they expected. Nathan drove to Hartford, taking side roads and checking constantly for tails. Lucas sat silent in the passenger seat, too shocked to ask questions. Good. Nathan needed time to think. They checked into a cheap motel off I-91 using cash. Nathan sent Lucas to shower while he paced the cramped room, pieces clicking together in his mind. Marie's research had been thorough. She'd documented years of fraud, dozens of cases where elderly people's estates had been manipulated, properties transferred to shell companies controlled by Stephen Arnold and his network. The victims were always vulnerable, recently widowed, isolated, without family nearby to notice the discrepancies. Marie had noticed because she'd been transcribing estate proceedings and spotted patterns. She'd started investigating her own parents' estate. They died in a car accident 2 years ago, left her a modest inheritance that had somehow shrunk considerably during probate. That's what had started her down the rabbit hole. And when she'd gotten too close, they'd killed her. Nathan felt rage building in his chest, hot and clean and clarifying. They'd murdered his wife, tried to destroy his son, and they'd done it all from behind the respectable facade of small-town propriety. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We know you took Lucas. Don't do anything stupid. This can still end quietly." Nathan stared at the message, then smashed the phone against the wall. Lucas emerged from the bathroom, eyes wide. "Dad, pack everything." Nathan's voice was controlled, each word deliberate. "We're switching motels." They moved twice more that night, zigzagging across Hartford. Nathan paid for everything in cash, used fake names. By midnight, they were in a long-term motel in Manchester, and Nathan finally felt secure enough to think beyond immediate survival. Lucas sat on the bed, no longer asking questions, just watching his father with a mixture of trust and terror. "Your mother didn't die of natural causes," Nathan said quietly. "She was murdered because she found out something that powerful people wanted hidden. Now they're trying to frame you to silence our family forever." He expected shock, denial. Instead, Lucas just nodded slowly. "I knew something was wrong. Mom was scared the last week. She kept checking the windows, locking doors. She told me if anything happened to her, I should tell you to check her office files." Nathan felt something crack in his chest. "She was protecting you, trying to keep you out of it. So what do we do?" Lucas's voice was steady, stronger than Nathan expected. "Do we go to the police? The FBI? The police might be compromised. Dean Herring is part of it. He's a notary who signed off on fraudulent documents. Carrie Alvarez is the probate attorney who processed all these fake wills. Who knows how deep this goes?" Nathan ran his hands through his hair. "No, we can't trust anyone official. Not yet." "Then what?" Nathan looked at his son, seeing not a child but a partner now, someone who'd been forced to grow up overnight. "Then we disappear. We let them think they won. And while they're celebrating, I'm going to destroy every single one of them." "How?" A cold smile touched Nathan's lips. "Your mother was smart enough to document everything. She just didn't live long enough to use it. But I will. I'm going to turn their own system against them, make them pay using the same methods they used to rob and kill. And when I'm done, they'll have lost everything. Money, reputation, freedom. Everything." Lucas was quiet for a long moment. "Then, I want to help." "No. You stay hidden, stay safe. This is going to get dangerous. Mom was my parent too." Lucas's jaw set with that familiar stubborn look. "They killed her. Try to make me look crazy. I'm not hiding while you fight alone." Nathan wanted to argue, to protect his son from what was coming. But looking at Lucas's determined face, he recognized something of himself there, and something of Marie too. They'd raised a fighter. "Okay," he said finally. "But you follow my lead. No unnecessary risks. Deal. Deal." They shook on it, man to man, and Nathan felt the balance shift. He wasn't just a grieving husband anymore, or a protective father. He was a man with a mission, and nothing, not fear, not law, not mercy, was going to stop him. He spent the rest of the night poring over Marie's files on her laptop, memorizing names and dates and dollar amounts. The conspiracy was even bigger than he'd thought. Stephen Arnold was the ringleader, but Rebecca Hartman Arnold handled the legal manipulation. Carrie Alvarez processed the fraudulent probate cases. Robbie Black, the funeral director, provided information about upcoming funerals, vulnerable targets. Dean Herring notarized the documents. And there were others. So many others. By dawn, Nathan had a plan. It would take time, patience, and absolute precision. But when he was done, the people who'd killed Marie would know exactly what they'd lost. He looked over at Lucas, asleep on the other bed, and made a silent promise. They'd taken his wife. They'd tried to take his son. Now Nathan Stanton was going to take everything from them. Nathan spent the next 2 weeks building his new identity. He'd always been methodical. It's what made him a good engineer, and now he applied that same precision to disappearing. He and Lucas became Eric and Eddie Morgan, father and son from Pennsylvania, relocating after a family tragedy. The irony wasn't lost on him. They rented a small apartment in New Britain, close enough to Millbrook to monitor events, but far enough to avoid casual recognition. Nathan grew a beard, cut his hair short, started wearing glasses with plain lenses. Lucas dyed his hair darker, changed his style. Small changes, but enough to blur their faces in memory. The hardest part was not contacting anyone. Nathan wanted to call his sister in Oregon, wanted to let his few friends know he was alive. But any contact could be traced, could expose them. So he stayed silent and watched the news from Millbrook. The story broke after a week. Father and son missing after grave desecration accusation. The police were investigating. Dean Herring had finally reported the evidence after Nathan failed to return. The narrative was already set. Disturbed boy, negligent father, shameful flight from justice. Nathan watched the press conference on his laptop, seeing Stephen Arnold standing behind the police chief, his face appropriately grave and concerned. Rebecca Hartman Arnold was there too, speaking about the need for mental health resources for troubled youth. They looked so respectable, so trustworthy. They're good, Lucas muttered, watching over Nathan's shoulder. They've had practice. Nathan took notes on who appeared in the footage, who spoke, who stood where. Every detail mattered. He spent his days working remotely. He told his engineering firm he was taking an extended leave to care for Lucas after Marie's death, and they'd been understanding enough to let him handle projects from home. The money wasn't great, but it kept them afloat while Nathan prepared his real work. His evenings were devoted to research. He created false identities online, built credibility on legal forums and estate planning websites. He studied Connecticut probate law until he could recite statutes in his sleep. He researched each member of the conspiracy, learning their habits, their weaknesses, their fears. Stephen Arnold was the key. He was a creature of reputation and control. His real estate empire was built on the perception of trustworthiness, of being a pillar of the community. That would be his downfall. Nathan started small. He created a fake email account and sent anonymous tips to 3 families whose estates had been processed by Carrie Alvarez and Arnold's firm. Just gentle suggestions that they might want to double-check the probate records, verify that Aunt Susan really meant to leave her house to a company called Hartford Holdings LLC instead of to her grandchildren. 2 families ignored the emails. The third, the Maxwell family, responded. Their elderly father Norman Maxwell had died 6 months ago, and his estate had been processed quickly. Too quickly, they'd thought, but they'd been grieving and hadn't questioned it. Nathan, using his false identity as a concerned legal advocate, guided them through requesting the full probate file. Within a week, they discovered discrepancies. A will that looked different from the one their father had shown them years earlier. Signatures that didn't quite match. A notary stamp from Dean Herring dated 3 days after Norman Maxwell died. The Maxwell family hired a lawyer. Not Carrie Alvarez, an attorney from New Haven who specialized in estate fraud. Nathan watched from a distance as the first crack appeared in Stephen Arnold's empire. The investigation into Norman Maxwell's estate took 3 weeks to gain traction. Nathan spent that time setting up his next moves, each one carefully calculated to apply pressure from a different angle. He'd studied psychology in college, enough to understand that paranoia was contagious. Make people suspicious of one thing, and they'd start questioning everything. He needed the conspiracy to eat itself from within. Using his fake identity, Nathan joined several Connecticut legal discussion boards and started asking innocent-seeming questions. Has anyone else noticed irregularities in Millbrook probate cases? What's the normal timeline for estate settlement? My uncle's took only 2 weeks. Is it common for funeral directors to recommend specific attorneys? He seeded doubt, dropped breadcrumbs, created just enough noise to make people wonder. Meanwhile, Lucas was proving surprisingly useful. The kid had his mother's mind for details and his father's patience. He'd been going through Marie's documentation, creating timelines and connection maps. At 13, he should have been playing video games or worrying about school dances. Instead, he was building a case that would destroy the people who'd killed his mother. Nathan felt guilty about that, but Lucas seemed calmer working on the project than he'd been since Marie's death. Revenge, Nathan was learning, could be a kind of therapy. Dad, look at this. Lucas pointed to a pattern he'd found. Every estate they stole from had been through Robbie Black's funeral home. He must be scouting targets. So if we shut down Black, we cut off their pipeline. How do we do that? Nathan smiled grimly. Funeral homes are subject to strict state regulations. Let's see how well Robbie's been following them. He spent the next week as Eric Morgan, concerned citizen, filing anonymous complaints with the Connecticut Department of Public Health. Improper embalming procedures. Unsanitary conditions. Mishandling of remains. Some of the complaints were based on real violations Nathan had discovered through his research. Others were creative fictions designed to trigger inspections. 2 weeks later, Robbie Black's funeral home was shut down pending investigation. Nathan watched the local news with satisfaction as Robbie stood outside his closed business, face red and furious, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. One down. The pressure was building. Nathan could see it in the news coverage, in the social media posts from Millbrook residents. The Maxwell family's lawsuit was getting attention. Other families were starting to ask questions about their own estates. The state inspector had found real violations at Black's funeral home. Nothing criminal yet, but enough to keep it closed. And Stephen Arnold was getting nervous. Nathan knew this because he'd set up monitoring software on Arnold's publicly available social media. The man's posts had gone from confident community updates to defensive explanations to long absences. He was feeling the walls close in. Good. Nathan's next move targeted Rebecca Hartman Arnold directly. She was a lawyer, subject to ethics complaints through the Connecticut bar. Nathan had Lucas help him draft a detailed, meticulously documented complaint outlining Rebecca's involvement in fraudulent estate transfers. They submitted it anonymously, along with copies of documents from Marie's files. The Bar Association would have to investigate. And even if Rebecca was eventually cleared, the cloud of suspicion would damage her reputation irreparably. Nathan was working on multiple fronts now, keeping the pressure constant. He'd created fake accounts and was posting in local Facebook groups, asking innocent questions that made people suspicious. Did anyone else's elderly relative suddenly change their will right before dying? Has anyone had issues with Hartford Holdings LLC? The paranoia spread like wildfire. Millbrook was a small town, and everyone knew everyone. Once people started talking, sharing stories, connecting dots, the conspiracy's secrecy became its liability. But Nathan wasn't done. He needed to hit them harder, faster. Because the longer this took, the more danger he and Lucas faced. And he still had no solid proof that Marie had been murdered, only circumstantial evidence, and his own certainty. He needed something that would blow the case wide open. Something that would force the police to take action, that would expose the conspiracy beyond any doubt. He found it in the most unlikely place, Dean Herring's computer. Nathan had been thinking about Herring. The principal had given him 24 hours, had seemed genuinely conflicted about reporting Lucas. That meant Herring wasn't fully committed to the conspiracy. He was a reluctant participant, probably blackmailed or coerced into helping. That made him a weakness, a potential crack in the armor. Nathan created a fake email account and sent Herring a message. I know what you did. I know about the notary stamps. I know about the children. He'd found references in Marie's notes to something involving Herring and scholarship fraud, but the details were vague. Still, the mere hint of something darker would make Herring panic. The principal responded within an hour. Please. I was trying to help those kids. It's not what you think. Nathan smiled. Herring was desperate, defensive. Perfect. He arranged a meeting in a public place, a coffee shop in Hartford. He went alone, leaving Lucas at the apartment with strict instructions to run if Nathan didn't return in 2 hours. Herring looked terrible. He'd lost weight, aged years in just weeks. When Nathan walked up to his table, The principal didn't even seem surprised to see him. I should turn you in, Herring said without preamble. Lucas is wanted for questioning. You're harboring him. Lucas is innocent, and you know it. Nathan sat down. Those items were planted in his locker. The question is, do you know who did it? Herring's eyes flickered. I can't. Dean, they killed my wife. They tried to destroy my son. And they used you to do it. Nathan leaned forward. How many documents did you notarize for them? How many fake wills? How many estates did you help them steal? I didn't know. Herring's voice cracked. Not at first. Stephen Arnold asked me to notarize some documents as a favor. Said it was time sensitive, the client couldn't come in person. I thought I was helping. By the time I realized what it really was, I was already implicated. And the scholarship fraud? Herring flinched. That's different. That wasn't fraud. I was trying to help underprivileged kids get into better schools. I may have exaggerated some qualifications, falsified some documents. But I was helping them. I'm sure the parents whose kids got rejected because you gave their spots to others would understand. Nathan's voice was cold. But that's not important right now. What matters is you're going to help me prove what Arnold did. I can't. He'll destroy me. He's going to destroy you anyway. You think he'll let you survive when this all comes out? You're a liability, Dean. A witness who can testify against him. How long before you have an accident like Marie did? Herring went white. You think he killed her? But she just, the doctors said organ failure. Poison can look like natural causes if you know what you're doing. And Stephen Arnold has resources. Nathan pulled out his phone, showed Herring a photo from Marie's files, a ledger showing millions in stolen assets. He's killed for this much money before. He'll kill again. The principal stared at the evidence, hands shaking. Finally, what do you want me to do? You're going to wear a wire and get Arnold to confess. That's insane. He'd never. Then I'll release everything I have about your scholarship fraud to the State Board of Education, the media, and every college you've ever worked with. You'll lose your job, your pension, probably go to jail. Is that what you want? It was a bluff. Nathan had no interest in destroying Herring, who seemed more foolish than evil. But the principal didn't know that. Herring buried his face in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red but determined. If I do this, you have to promise my family will be protected. Stephen has friends everywhere. If he finds out I betrayed him, you'll have immunity. I'll make sure the FBI knows you cooperated. Another bluff, but a convincing one. Herring nodded slowly. Okay, what's the plan? Nathan spent the next 3 days preparing. He bought a high-quality recording device, small enough to hide, sophisticated enough to capture clear audio. He coached Herring on what to say, how to guide the conversation, how to get Arnold to incriminate himself. The plan was simple. Herring would tell Arnold that Nathan Stanton had contacted him, threatening to expose everything unless Arnold paid him off. Arnold would either try to bribe Herring to handle it, or he'd reveal enough about the conspiracy to prove his guilt. Either way, they'd have evidence. The meeting was set for a Saturday morning at Arnold's real estate office. Nathan would be waiting outside in a van Lucas had helped him rent, monitoring the audio feed. Are you sure about this? Lucas asked as they drove Herring to the meeting. No, Nathan admitted. But we're running out of time. The longer we wait, the more likely they figure out we're still around and planning something. Herring looked green. What if he searches me for a wire? Then you say you're paranoid because you're committing a crime. It'll make sense. Nathan checked the recording equipment one more time. Remember, get him talking about the estates. Get him to admit they falsified documents. Get him to mention Marie if you can. And if he threatens me, then you have proof of obstruction of justice too. Nathan met the principal's eyes. Dean, you can do this. For Marie. For all the families they robbed. Herring nodded, took a deep breath, and got out of the van. Nathan and Lucas watched him walk into the building. Nathan pulled on headphones, adjusting the receiver. Herring's footsteps echoed through the empty office. Then a door opening, Arnold's voice. Dean, this better be important. I have a tea time at 11. We have a problem. Nathan Stanton contacted me. A pause. Then, that's impossible. Stanton fled the state. He's probably in Mexico by now. He's not. He emailed me. Said he knows everything. Has all his wife's documentation. Says he'll expose us unless we pay him $500,000. Nathan heard Arnold laugh, a cold sound. That's ridiculous. The man's a fugitive. If he shows his face, he'll be arrested for what his psycho son did. Stephen, listen to me. He knows about the estates. He knows about the wills we changed. He has proof. There is no proof. But Arnold's voice had changed, become harder. Marie Stanton was a nosy bitch who didn't know when to stop asking questions. We took care of that problem. Nathan's hands clenched. There it was. The confession. You said she died of natural causes. Herring's voice wavered convincingly. Natural causes that required a little help from our friend Carrie. He has access to some interesting pharmaceutical compounds through his estate work. Amazing what you can slip into someone's coffee that'll make their organs shut down 72 hours later. Untraceable, if you know what you're doing. Carrie Alvarez, the probate attorney. So he'd been the one to poison Marie. Jesus, Stephen. Herring sounded genuinely shocked. You said we were just manipulating paperwork. I didn't sign up for murder. You signed up for whatever I told you to sign up for. Arnold's voice turned threatening. You're in this as deep as anyone, Dean. You notarized those documents. Your signature is on dozens of fraudulent wills. If I go down, you go down harder. So what do we do about Stanton? Same thing we did to his wife. Maybe a car accident this time. Him and the kid both, somewhere far from here. Make it look like they were running, got careless. Problem solved. Nathan pulled off the headphones, hands shaking with rage. Lucas was staring at him, pale. He killed Mom, Lucas whispered. They really killed her. I know. Nathan's voice was steady despite the fury burning in his chest. And now we have proof. He saved the recording, backed it up to 3 different cloud accounts. Then he sent Herring a text. Got what we needed. Get out safe. 2 minutes later, Herring emerged from the building, walking fast. He got into the van, sweat pouring down his face. Did you hear it all? He gasped. Every word. Nathan started the engine. Dean, as of right now, you're going to the FBI. You're going to tell them everything. And you're going to give them this recording. Stephen will know it was me. Stephen's going to have bigger problems than you. Nathan's smile was cold. Because I'm not done with him yet. The FBI took the recording seriously. Nathan had Lucas deliver it, still maintaining his false identity, along with copies of all Marie's documentation. The agent who received it, a woman named Patricia Lozano, promised to investigate immediately. But Nathan knew how these things worked. Investigations took time. Warrants, evidence chains, legal procedures. It could be months before Arnold and his co-conspirators faced charges. Nathan didn't have months. He had rage and grief and a burning need to see these people suffer now, not eventually. So while the FBI built their case, Nathan built his own form of justice. He started with Carrie Alvarez, the probate attorney who'd poisoned Marie. Nathan had been researching the man for weeks, learning his habits, his weaknesses, his secrets. Alvarez was careful about his professional life, but sloppy in his personal one. He gambled, owed money to some unpleasant people in Hartford, and had a taste for expensive scotch that his salary couldn't support. Nathan created a fake gambling contact, someone who promised Alvarez a chance to win big and clear his debts. All he had to do was meet at a specific location with cash to front his bets. Alvarez bit. He showed up at the abandoned warehouse in East Hartford with $40,000, embezzled from client estates. Nathan was certain. Nathan was waiting. Carrie Alvarez, he said, stepping from the shadows. He ditched his disguise. No point hiding now. Remember me? Alvarez froze, recognition and fear flooding his face. Stanton? But you're wanted for crimes I didn't commit? Yeah, unlike the crimes you definitely did commit. Nathan circled him slowly. You poisoned my wife. Put something in her coffee that shut down her organs over 3 days. Made it look natural. I don't know what you're talking about. Alvarez backed toward the door. Don't bother running. I've got your confession on tape. Stephen Arnold was very chatty when he thought he was safe. Nathan pulled out his phone, played the recording. Alvarez's face went gray as he heard Arnold describe the murder. I was following orders, Alvarez whispered. Stephen said she was going to destroy everything. I didn't want to but you did it anyway. And now you're going to pay for it. Nathan could have turned Alvarez over to the police right then. Could have let the system handle it. But the rage inside him demanded something more personal, more immediate. Here's what's going to happen, Nathan said quietly. You're going to walk into the Hartford Police Department and confess to murdering Marie Stanton. You're going to detail exactly how you did it, who ordered it, and every other crime you've committed. And if I don't, then I release evidence of your embezzlement to your clients, your gambling debts to your creditors, and this recording to the media. You'll be dead within a week. either from one of your loan sharks or from someone in Arnold's network silencing you. Is that what you want? Alvarez was shaking now. If I confess, I'll go to prison forever. Better than being dead. And who knows? If you cooperate fully, maybe you get a deal. Maybe you see daylight again before you're 90. Nathan stepped closer. But mostly, you confess because you killed an innocent woman who was just trying to do the right thing. You destroyed a family, and you need to face that. Something broke in Alvarez then. He sank to his knees, sobbing. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this. Steven said it would be easy money, just some paperwork changes, helping people who were gone anyway. I didn't know it would lead to murder. But when it did, you went along with it. Nathan felt no pity, only cold satisfaction. Get up. We're going to the police. Now. He walked Carrie Alvarez into the Hartford Police Department at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night. The attorney confessed to everything. The estate fraud, the embezzlement, and the murder of Marie Stanton through toxic poisoning. He implicated Steven Arnold, Rebecca Hartman Arnold, Robbie Black, Dean Herring, and 4 others Nathan hadn't even known about. The police arrested Nathan, of course. But when they matched his story to the evidence the FBI had received, when they verified the recording and saw Marie's documentation, the charges against him and Lucas evaporated like morning fog. The conspiracy collapsed within 72 hours. Steven Arnold was arrested at his home at 6 a.m. the next morning. The news crews captured him in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled, his face no longer confident, but stunned and terrified. Rebecca Hartman Arnold was taken from her law office an hour later. Robbie Black was arrested at his closed funeral home. Dean Herring turned himself involuntarily, already having secured an immunity deal in exchange for testimony. For other co-conspirators, people Nathan had never heard of, were rounded up by the end of the week. The media descended on Millbrook like locusts. Small-town corruption scandal. Murder for money. How a grieving husband exposed a state fraud ring. Nathan's face was everywhere, transformed from fugitive to hero overnight. He hated it. The attention, the questions, the way people suddenly wanted to treat him like he'd done something noble. He hadn't done this for recognition. He'd done it for Marie. For Lucas. For the chance to sleep without seeing his wife's face, wondering if he could have saved her. The trial took 8 months. Nathan and Lucas testified, sitting across from Steven Arnold and watching the man squirm as evidence mounted against him. Carrie Alvarez's confession was damning. The recordings were irrefutable. Marie's documentation showed years of systematic theft. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Steven Arnold got life without parole for murder and racketeering. Rebecca Hartman Arnold got 25 years for conspiracy and fraud. Carrie Alvarez, in exchange for his confession, got 40 years with possibility of parole. Robbie Black got 15 years. Dean Herring, thanks to his immunity deal, got probation and lost his job but avoided prison. Nathan watched the sentencing from the back of the courtroom, Lucas beside him. When the judge read the verdict for Arnold, Nathan felt something release in his chest. Not relief, not exactly. Maybe just exhaustion. Is it over? Lucas asked quietly. Yeah, Nathan said. It's over. But it wasn't, not really. The lawsuits came next. Families whose estates had been stolen filed claims against Arnold's empire. The state seized his assets, including properties and accounts. There was enough recovered money to partially compensate most of the victims, though nothing could restore what they'd lost in time and grief. Nathan and Lucas were offered a settlement, compensation for Marie's murder, for the trauma, for the false accusations. Nathan took enough to ensure Lucas's college education was covered and donated the rest to a fund for the other victims. They couldn't stay in Millbrook. Too many memories, too much press attention. Nathan accepted a job offer from an engineering firm in Vermont. Good money, quiet location, a chance to start over. On their last day in Connecticut, Nathan took Lucas to Marie's grave. Someone had cleaned it, replanted flowers, put up a new headstone that read, Marie Wade Stanton. Beloved wife, mother, and seeker of truth. Your courage changed everything. Lucas placed flowers on the grave, then stepped back. Do you think she knows? That we got them? I think she knows. Nathan put his arm around his son's shoulders. I think she's proud of you. Of both of us. I miss her. Me too, buddy. Every day. They stood in silence for a while, the November wind cold around them. Exactly a year since Marie had been buried. Then Nathan squeezed Lucas's shoulder. Come on. We've got a long drive ahead. The Vermont house was small but comfortable, set on 3 acres of wooded land with a view of mountains. Nathan enrolled Lucas in the local high school, where he quickly made friends and joined the robotics club. The kid was resilient, Nathan thought. Stronger than anyone should have to be at 14. Nathan threw himself into his work, designing bridges and buildings with the same precision he'd applied to bringing down Stephen Arnold. But at night, alone in the house with Lucas asleep upstairs, he sometimes pulled out Marie's laptop and looked at her unfinished email to the police. She tried to do the right thing, tried to expose corruption through official channels. And they'd killed her for it. Nathan had done the right thing too, eventually. But only after he'd done the necessary thing, the dangerous, illegal, ruthless thing that actually worked. He wondered sometimes if he'd become like them, like the people he'd destroyed. If revenge had corrupted him the way money had corrupted Arnold. But then he'd remember Marie's face. Lucas's trauma. The dozens of families who'd been robbed. And he'd know that what he did was different. He'd given them justice when the system couldn't. He'd made the guilty pay. That had to count for something. A year later, Nathan received a letter. No return address, postmarked from Boston. Inside was a newspaper clipping. Stephen Arnold had been found dead in his cell. Heart attack, the article said, though there were rumors of foul play. There was also a brief note in handwriting Nathan didn't recognize. Some debts are paid in full. Thank you for what you did. Nathan burned the letter, but he knew what it meant. Someone whose family had been destroyed by Arnold's conspiracy had taken matters into their own hands. Someone else seeking justice in whatever form they could find. He should have felt vindicated. Instead, he just felt tired. Lucas found him in the kitchen that evening, staring at nothing. You okay, Dad? Yeah. Nathan managed to smile. Just thinking. About Mom. Always about Mom. Lucas sat down across from him. He was 15 now, nearly as tall as Nathan, his voice deeper, his face losing its boyish softness. Growing into a man who'd been forged by tragedy and tempered by survival. I'm glad we did what we did, Lucas said quietly. I'm glad we didn't just let them win. Even though it was illegal? Dangerous. Even though. Lucas met his father's eyes. Mom taught me that standing up for what's right isn't always easy or safe. You showed me that sometimes you have to fight for justice because no one else will. Nathan felt his throat tighten. Your mother would have done it the legal way. Would have trusted the system. Maybe. Or maybe she would have done exactly what you did, if she'd had the chance. Lucas reached across the table, gripped his father's hand. We got them, Dad. We made them pay. And now we get to live. That's what matters. Nathan squeezed his son's hand, feeling the strength there, the certainty. Maybe Lucas was right. Maybe this was as close to a happy ending as they were going to get. Alive, together, free from the people who'd tried to destroy them. Outside, the Vermont winter was settling in, snow beginning to fall across the mountains. Inside, Nathan and Lucas sat together in the warm kitchen, 2 survivors who'd fought darkness and won. Not the ending Nathan would have chosen, but the one they'd earned. And in the end, that was enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.